afternoon. My name is Katie C. I am the volunteer lead for Greater Lansing Area Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Moms Demand Action is the grassroots wing of Everytown. It was formed after the school shooting in Sandy Hook in 2012. Since that tragic event, we have learned so much about gun violence in our country. We know that firearms are the second leading cause of death for children in Michigan, second only to automobile accidents. We know we have seen too many stories in the news about gun violence in Lansing, or young children accidentally killed by firearms that have not been stored properly. Many of us have been personally affected by gun violence, the suicide of a loved one, the firearm death of a child or grandchild. These events devastate families. They also traumatize friends and often whole neighborhoods, and they have affected Lansing deeply during this past year especially. We are here to help stop the violence. Who are we? We are your neighbors. Our members come from all walks of life, including teachers who worry about their students, hospital workers who treat victims of gun violence, and public safety officers and veterans concerned about the high rate of gun suicide in our community and among their colleagues. Activists responding to the consequences of systemic racism. Many of us are survivors who have lost spouses, children, siblings, and good friends to gun violence. We do this work because we are so aware of the trauma in our families and communities that result from any form of armed violence. I'd like to describe our goals, and our primary goal is to reduce and hopefully eliminate all forms of gun violence. We support citizens' Second Amendment rights to gun ownership, but we try to reduce gun violence in several ways: by education, advocacy, electoral activities, and partnership with local organizations that address the causes of violence in our community. Our education effort involves increased public awareness of the seriousness of gun violence, its causes, and ways that we can work to prevent it. We have an effective education tool that is available to any community group. It's a program called Be Smart for Kids. We'll present it to your church, your temple, your parent groups, your schools, your community centers and community organizations. We can do this virtually, and someday we'll be there to do it in person when we get through COVID. This program explains what we know about gun violence and how best you and I can work to reduce the risks. The Be Smart program is about a half an hour long, and it gives us an opportunity to engage with you about what are your questions about guns in the home. We have 4 principles. It's called Be Smart. S, store guns safely, and we talk about ways to do that. M, model responsible behavior. For example, how to handle guns so that everyone in your network knows that you know what you're doing. A, ask about the presence of guns in other people's homes. This is one of the most important things, especially when our kids go out on play dates or our youth go to parties or we're just visiting others. We have to learn how to ask. R, recognize the role of guns in suicide and the telltale signs of vulnerability to suicide. So in this program, we emphasize particularly who and how people are at risk for gun suicide and how we can provide them with the resources they need to avoid this risk. And finally, tell others about these key behaviors. So this is at the heart of our outreach work, but we also have other educational outreach efforts to churches, community groups, school boards, to share our work, to raise awareness, and to support our partner organizations. Moms Demand Action also engages in advocacy, And this involves promoting evidence-based gun sense policy at all levels and in all spheres of government. To the City Council in Lansing, to the state representatives, to the governor, and at the federal level. Every spring we have an advocacy day during which volunteers from all over Michigan visit our local representatives and advocate legislation to reduce gun violence and save lives. We're also deeply involved in the policy discussions about the use of force in policing and about supporting empirically grounded ways to interrupt violence and resolve conflicts without firearms. In addition to our advocacy, we are engaged in electoral activities, supporting and working for gun sense candidates, those who support policies to reduce gun violence, and mobilizing voters who will support these candidates. Another way in which we do our work, and one that is particularly important in Lansing, is through partnerships with organizations working together that share our goals. It truly takes a village to address gun violence, and we are fortunate to share this work in partnership with amazing local organizations such as the Mikey 23 Foundation and Siblings Against Gun Violence. Together, we support the annual Mikey 23-led March Against Violence, which will be held again in August this year, both a virtual and a physical march. And we will join with any organization in the Lansing area that wants to work together to end gun violence in all forms in our community. Our primary goal of ending gun violence includes all these kinds of activities, but I want to emphasize that support for survivors is at the heart of the work of Moms Demand Action. Every survivor matters. Everyone who is touched by gun violence matters. Our organization has a survivors network that reaches out to victims of gun violence and nurtures a community of support among survivors. Every town offers therapeutic help with trauma-informed counselors and therapists to any survivor in need. The first week in February, we hold a National Gun Violence Survivors Week, in which we recognize the trauma and loss that survivors endure and salute their everyday courage and resilience. In addition, every June, we hold an annual event in the community called Wear Orange to honor the victims of gun violence in every form. Greater Lansing area Moms Demand Action meets every month on the second Monday to educate ourselves about what's happening in our Lansing community and in the state of Michigan, and to develop action plans to address gun violence. If you're interested in joining us or want to learn more about Moms Demand Action, or would like us to do a presentation for your organization, contact me at lansingmomsdemandaction@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Kerry Smith. I am the co-founder of One Faith, located right here in Lansing, Michigan. What is One Faith? One Faith is a God-inspired initiative to unify and encourage the church to operate exclusively in the authority of God's Word. One Faith is a vehicle through which churches can combine resources and gifts in order to advance God's kingdom. Although the structure and the traditions of churches may vary, the Great Commission does state something very important. In Mark 6:15, it instructs us to go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. In order to be successful in this assignment, the church must be on one accord and walk together in the spirit of unity. Thus, the name One Faith. One of our main objectives is to unify the church, specifically here in the city of Lansing. For years, we have operated independently. We've kind of all done our own things. And something that our community is missing is the church. The church at this point is voiceless, and our community needs us. They need us all to be working together on one accord. One of our main priorities is to engage the communities in which we all live in. That means boots on the ground, physically walking through neighborhoods, talking to neighbors, talking to store owners, and just trying to put our finger on the pulse of that neighborhood and some of the issues that they're facing. Now, we may not be able to resolve those issues, but we are in a position to speak to those who may be in need. And maybe the church is working together, we can pool our resources together and serve the community in a way that they'll know and understand that someone cares. One of the main hindrances of the churches and of organizations that want to help people, we all run into this situation, this question of how do we best help? Well, One Faith goes out there and we get those answers. We try to find out what help is needed, and we try to pull those resources together in order to serve the community in the best way. One of our initiatives is also working closely with the Lansing Police Department to establish better relationships between the community and the police department themselves. We hope to work as a liaison between the two to improve communications, to improve the way that we handle situations within our community, and so also everybody can come to the table and have a voice on how to best be partners in all of this. We are located in Lansing. We are willing to travel outside of Lansing if need be. The best way to get in contact with One Faith is you can contact us by email. The number 1, faithlansing@gmail.com. You can also contact us by phone. Our number is 517-708-7745. You can also contact us in writing at 505 Seymour, Lansing, Michigan, 48933. In closing, I want you to know that we challenge the traditional mindset that constrains ministries into the 4 walls of a building. The freedom from the bonds of religiosity permits us the ability to minister to those that are lost. It allows us to identify with those who are hurting, allows us to identify with those who are really struggling within our community. So please reach out to One Faith. We are willing to work with any church. You do not have to be of any denomination. We are willing to work with any and all of those who are interested in serving the communities in which we live. Thank you.
Part 1. Michigan law requires that every motorist pull the vehicle to the side of the road and stop for emergency vehicles giving signal by emergency lights and sirens. When an officer conducts a traffic stop for a traffic violation, he or she are observing the actions of the vehicle, driver, and occupants. Drivers, when signaled by an officer, should immediately pull to the side of the road and stop. If they are stopping in an intersection or would be blocking a driveway, it is acceptable to move slightly beyond that point. Drivers should wait until the officer makes contact with them before looking through their vehicle for required documents such as license, registration, and insurance. Unnecessary movements by the driver or occupants of a vehicle puts an officer on alert. These movements could be an indication of the occupants are trying to hide something or retrieve something that could put the officer and or occupants in danger. Part 2, initial officer contact. LPD officers are required by policy to identify themselves and the reason they are stopping the driver. At this point, during the stop, the officer will request the desired documents. After receiving the required documents, the officer will return to their patrol car to continue the investigation of the stop. It should be noted that officers are also trained to detect and observe other actions that may indicate other violations such as impaired driving. If an officer observes any of the indications of impaired driving or other violations of law, they will, by law, request the driver to exit the vehicle to investigate the possibility of an impaired driver or other violations. It is not uncommon for an officer to request a driver to exit the vehicle while conducting a traffic stop investigation. This contact between officer and driver is not to have a discussion as to whether there was a traffic violation or not. If you believe that you were stopped for an unjustified reason, we will discuss at the end of the video how to contest the stop and citation. Once an officer has obtained the requested documentation and has determined that there is no other violation occurring, the officer will return to their patrol vehicle. While in the patrol vehicle, officers are still observing their surroundings and what is going on inside the vehicle. Again, for the safety of the officer and the occupants of the vehicle, no one inside the vehicle should be moving around. While in the patrol vehicle, the officer is checking through a state system where the registration, insurance, and driver's license is valid and that there are no outstanding warrants. The officer then fills out the requested information in the system and prints off a citation for the violation or issues a warning if desired. Part 3, issuing of a citation or warning. The officer has given the citation to the driver. They have explained the violation and contact information for the Lansing City Attorney's Office to handle the citation. This is one example of how a traffic stop is conducted here at Lansing Police Department. All actions by the officers and drivers kept everyone involved safe and were captured on patrol vehicle dash cam as well as the officer's body-worn camera. In addition, in response to a national debate, the Lansing Police Department began a voluntary and comprehensive process of ensuring LPD officers did not practice what has become known as racial profiling or racial biased policing. As a means to monitor officers' behavior related to traffic stops, LPD began collecting traffic stop data for analysts known as the Management Analyst of Traffic Stops, or MATS for short, program. We have been collecting this data for 19 years, and every year an assessment is made concerning the department's traffic stop behaviors. Ingham County courts are also part of an online case review system called courtinnovations.com. This online system allows citizens to resolve a case quickly and when it's convenient for them. Through this online website, citizens can request to have a violation changed to one with no or fewer driver's license points, resolve a fail to pay warrant without being arrested or coming to court, and also having a traffic parking ticket reviewed. If you believe that you were treated unfairly by the officer, you can call our central dispatch at 517-483-6800 and request to speak to the on-duty command officer.